Hi, so I'm Georgie. I'm one of the study coordinators for PD Frontline alongside Millie, and we will be talking a bit about what the PD Frontline study is and how it works, how you might be able to register, and then Millie will be going into some details about clinical trials and studies that we're associated with and the criteria associated with those. So these are just some details for our website and our mailbox if you wanted to contact us about where your sample is or any general queries about how to register. If you just get in touch via these details. So PD Frontline is a national remote study which conducts genetic testing for the GBA1 and LRRK2 genes. These are two risk factors that are associated with developing Parkinson's. So we test these via two different lab groups, and we return the results over the course of your participation in the study. And the way that you can register is via the online website. So, as I said, we're an online study, and all participation is conducted completely online. So you can register, complete your consent form, questions for the study, and then you will receive a genetic testing kit which can be done at home and returned back to us on site at the Royal Free Hospital. So the purpose of the study is to identify people with Parkinson's disease, and we test for the two known PD risk factor genes called the GBA1 and the LRRK2 gene. The GBA1 and LRRK2 gene statuses are important for eligibility for clinical trials and studies such as the ASPRO study. So our two main aims are to identify risk factors and referral to clinical trials. So just to give you a bit of information about how this works, to identify risk factors, we conduct the genetic sequencing and we identify any variants or mutations in the GBA1 gene. These are then released back to any of our participants and their clinicians and GPs where they've consented for. We also function as a registry for clinical trials and studies. So when people have received their results, we can cross-check any of their further details and see whether they meet any preliminary criteria for a referral to a clinical trial or an observational study. We also look to identify novel risk factors that are associated with the GBA1 gene. So what is GBA1? So GBA1 is the name of a gene that we all have. As Marco spoke about earlier, we all have two copies of every gene, one from your mother and one from your father. Some people have changes in these genes known as variants or mutations. GBA1 gene variants have been found in around 10% of people with Parkinson's disease. This is higher in the Ashkenazi Jewish population. About 20% of those with GBA1 variants get PD by the age of 80. So what is the LRRK2 gene? So we also test for a variant known as the LRRK2 gene, called the G2019S variant. This is just one specific change within the LRRK2 gene. It's found in less than 1% of people with Parkinson's, and as before, it's seen more commonly in the Ashkenazi Jewish population than others. So why is this important? Within the general population, everyone has around a 3% chance of developing Parkinson's by the age of 80 years old. This risk increases in those with GBA1 variants. So the majority of our cohort that have a GBA1 variant have come back as low risk or mild variants. We do have a subset of people who have more severe variants. This increases your likelihood of developing Parkinson's by the age of 80 years old. All GBA1 variants can be passed down through either the maternal or the paternal line. We would not know whether this was from your mother or father without a specific testing sample. We do offer testing for first-degree relatives of those that have GBA1 variants through our sister study RAPSODI. If this is something you're interested in, you can contact our mailbox and we can speak to you further about this. So why is this important? So as Marco went into quite a bit of detail about, mutations in the GBA1 gene affect the functioning of the enzyme glucose-3-biosidase, or GCase. GCase activity is lowered in people with GBA1 PD. So what this means is it can cause an increase in the protein alpha-synuclein, a loss of dopaminergic neurons, and other common features of Parkinson's. LRRK2 variants cause increased kinase activity in the protein and also cause a loss of dopaminergic neurons. So in terms of how to register, we have two pathways which you can join PD Frontline through. One is through NHS sites, so you may have been referred to the PD Frontline study via your clinician, and if you are referred in this pathway, you would note down at your site the site of your referral, so whichever hospital has referred you to the study. Alternatively, you can self-register. The whole process takes about 10 minutes and it involves completing a consent form, answering some questions. This is generally about your demographic data, some contact details, some information about your Parkinson's disease, and some information about your GP and clinician. We do send out positive results, the information about this to GPs and clinicians where it is consented for. So to register, you would go to the website listed on the screen and register your details, answer the questions, and then we will assess whether you're eligible for a saliva collection kit. So currently we are prioritizing those that meet the preliminary criteria for ASPRO as laid out previously by Mairead. We are looking to post sample collection kits to a wider audience at a later date. So what you would need to do is complete the saliva kit. It is a small tube which you would collect your saliva in and then return it to us at the Royal Free in a prepaid envelope. We would then put the sample through sequencing for GBA1 and LRRK2, and any of your results would be returned via your online account. So who can take part? So the wider criteria for PD Frontline is that you need a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease from a clinician. You must live in the UK so that we can send you out a testing kit via the post. You must not know if you carry a GBA1 variant. If you happen to know that you carry one of these particular changes, if you could contact us at the study, we can direct you to other clinical studies. You must be aged between 18 to 90 years old. Our exclusion criteria is quite small. We rule out those with other neurological conditions such as dementia and motor neurone disease. So what happens next? So when you receive your genetic sequencing results, it takes up to about a year to receive the results from us. This is because we work with several different lab groups, and the sequencing process can be quite complicated to complete. If you have a positive result, you will be contacted and counselled by a member of the team who will explain to you what that particular change in your gene means, how it might affect any inheritance for family members, and you'll receive some information in a report so that you can refer to this later on. If you have a negative result, you will simply receive a report via the online portal. After you've received your results, you'll be contacted further if any study or clinical trial opportunities emerge that you might be eligible for. So I'm just going to hand over to Millie, who will talk a bit further about the studies and trials that are available from our registry.
Hi guys, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the different studies and trials that we collaborate with and that we help with recruitment in terms of genetic sequencing. So Marco and Mairead have already spoken a little bit about the ASPRO PD trial, and I'm just going to give a slight overview of all of kind of the basic information. So they're currently recruiting hopefully around 330 participants, and this includes both GBA PD participants and idiopathic PD participants. That's people with no known GBA1 mutations. The recruitment window is expected to last 2 years. So although people may be getting recruited now, that doesn't mean that people are who haven't been recruited are no longer going to be eligible for the trial. The recruitment period will be rolling over 2 years. So if you haven't already been contacted but you are eligible, there is still, a high chance that you'll be contacted in the future over these next 2 years. The eligibility criteria is 35 to 75 years old. Your disease duration must be within the last 7 years, so we're saying 2018 at any point in that year onwards. No history of DBS, which is deep brain stimulation surgery, and there is further eligibility and exclusion criteria upon further screening, which happens at the site by the doctor or the nurse who is doing the research. So how a referral works from PD Frontline's perspective is that when participants get their GBA and LRRK2 sequencing results, we then kind of screen them for all of these preliminary eligibility criteria. We'll get in touch with them, usually via email, but if we can't get in touch with them then, we'll give them a call and ask for their consent to refer their details onto the NHS trial sites. What happens then is we send the information to the NHS trial sites and they themselves will get in touch with their participant. They will then potentially be brought in for screening, and it is then after screening at the site that people are either recruited to the trial or they're found to not be eligible with the further eligibility criteria. So PD Frontline's involvement is that we will contact you directly if you have fulfilled all of the preliminary eligibility criteria and you've been successfully sequenced and told of your genetic status by us in both the GBA1 and LRRK2 genes. So just a little bit about the EGS Act PD trial, which Simon mentioned earlier. It's the multi-arm, multi-stage trial that's hopefully starting at some point this year. This is just some of the basic information that we have so far. So it's a slightly wider participant pool in that rather than the 330 participants in Ambroxol, this is now 1,600 participants. They're anticipating that the trial sites will be spread across the UK and that there'll be around 40 sites. And it's almost entirely remote if needed, so a lot of the follow-up appointments can be done online via video call, and the treatments will be able to be sent to participating pharmacies that are local to the participants. Another study that we're involved with is a company called GP2, and they're intending to gather genetic data globally from different cohorts of people with Parkinson's disease. So their aim is to collect and genotype more than 150,000 individual patient samples. And they're wanting to look at increasing the diversity in the research in people with Parkinson's as well, so hopefully kind of reaching a global audience through that. So if you have signed up to PD Frontline and you have sent us a saliva sample, that also will be sequenced by GP2 using things like whole genome sequencing. They'll use slightly different techniques to what we do for our sequencing of the GBA1 gene, but all samples that are sent to us also get sent on to GP2. So you are participating in this additional study if you were also already part of PD Frontline. A study that we run at UCL where we're based and that involves some of our clinicians that are part of our team is the PD biome study. So this is looking at investigating the microbiome of the gut in people with GBA variants. So this is both people with Parkinson's who have a known GBA variant and also non-manifesting carriers of GBA. So this might be, for example, the first-degree relatives of someone with Parkinson's who also has a GBA variant. We collect stool and saliva samples as well as sebum, blood and urine samples, and these are all to look at the different biomarkers of Parkinson's disease. The study also involves a clinical assessment, so that takes around 2 hours, based at the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead in London, and it is composed of a variety of different motility and cognitive tests, some that you might be familiar with from clinics, some that might not be so familiar with you, but are used often in neurological research. And this can be taken part in by anyone who, regardless of where you live. So if you need to travel far, we can organise a hotel or transport for you so that you can take part in this. This is usually recruited for by us, so we kind of screen people and get in contact with them first. But if you think that this might be something that you're interested, you're more than welcome to contact us about it. Kind of along the same line, we also have an MRI gut motility study. This is a sub-study of our sister study, I've said study a lot, sister study RAPSODI, and this uses MRI to examine the motility in the gut. So some people with Parkinson's have expressed that they felt symptoms in their gut prior to developing Parkinson's, and whilst they have Parkinson's as well. We don't know the cause of these symptoms, so this is why this investigation is happening. So it involves coming to UCLH, which is in London, having a scan done and then drinking quite a lot of this liquid and having another scan done to see how the gut works in people with Parkinson's. Again, we kind of recruit for that from our side, so we contact people who we know are eligible for it. But if you are interested, you can again contact us. This can also be done in collaboration with the PD Biome study, which I just mentioned. So for example, it can be done with the PD Biome study on one day, stay in a hotel for one night and do the MRI study the next day. We've also been collaborating with the research team in Aarhus at Aarhus University Hospital, which is in Denmark. So the aim of this project is to explore how and where Parkinson's begins, because we currently aren't too sure on that. What we do from our side is we screen our participants for those who might be eligible. At the moment, we're looking at non-manifesting GBA carriers, but we've previously sent people who are healthy controls or have GBA PD or idiopathic PD. It's quite an intensive 3-day stay. It involves some imaging scans like MRI, but also PET scans. There's some further clinical examinations which are performed by the doctors there. And there's also sleep studies each night, which involves a lot of wires attached to people's heads that measure any abnormal behaviour in the brain during sleep. Again, this takes place over 3 days, but all expenses are paid, so hotels are booked for you, and so is plane travel. You usually fly over with someone from the English team, and most days finish at about 3 p.m, so a lot of people have time to explore Aarhus, which is a lovely little city in Denmark. Again, this is something that we usually contact people about, but if you think that you might be eligible to take part and you're interested, you can contact us. So our results so far, the graph on the left shows the increase in our cohort from near to when we first started, 2020 onwards to 2025. You can see the gradual increase in our recruitment over the years. We've now reached 6,400 participants, which is really amazing to have managed to amass that many people from across the UK all in one little study. And then on the right, we have a graph just to show how many participants have been recruited by our NHS sites, who are really important in kind of spreading the word about PD Frontline and getting any of their patients at clinics to get involved in genetic testing and clinical trials as well. So you can see the Northern Care Alliance has recruited lots of our participants for us. That's the groups that involve Salford and Fairfield, which are actually currently just opened as Aspro sites. We've also got a lot of people in Somerset, York and Scarborough, Cambridge, in Wales as well. So we've got recruitment from many different NHS sites across the UK. So as I said, we have a cohort of over 6,400 active participants, and we have genotyped over 3,000 of these participants. So 3,000 people have been successfully sequenced by us and now know their GBA1 and LRRK2 status. We're currently in the process of sequencing around 1,000 more participants. That's people who are either awaiting being told their results or they're currently in the pipeline of sequencing. We have identified over 360 participants with Parkinson's disease who have a genetic variant in their GBA1 gene. So that's that kind of 10 to 12% of people with Parkinson's disease who have a genetic variant in the GBA1 gene. We've also found 5 new GBA variants that have never been reported in literature before. So these are novel variants that haven't been classified before. To our knowledge, they're only seen in those particular participants, which is really exciting to find kind of new genetic mutations that haven't been documented before. And this is just some analysis of the data that we have. So this shows the kind of 12% of people with Parkinson's disease who have a GBA1 mutation. And on the right, this shows the age at diagnosis of Parkinson's disease by genotype. So in different genotypes, from wild type to severe, you can see that the average age at diagnosis of PD differs slightly. So in people with more severe variants, they have a lower age at diagnosis of PD compared to people who are wild type. The average here is just seen with this horizontal bar in the middle. And these are some publications from our department. These range from research papers to lit reviews, and they're all available online if anybody is interested in reading anything. There's some stuff about the RAPSODI study itself, some things about diet and gut microbiome, which we're currently still looking into as well. And this is just a quick call for ambassadors. So if any of you have outreach in your local Parkinson's community, so you might attend some sports groups that are specific to people with Parkinson's, you might attend a support group, and if you think that PD Frontline could be helpful to some people in getting them access to clinical trials or getting them genotyped, we would like to hear from you if you'd like to become a PD Frontline ambassador and help us out in expanding our research. This would be quite low intensity involvement, so it would involve us sending you some promotional material like flyers, which have instructions on how to sign up and a QR code to access the website, and it would just recognise you as an official PD Frontline ambassador who has helped us to increase our outreach in the PD community so that we can sequence more people and get access for more people to clinical trials. So yeah, you can just contact us at the email address there. And just a quick thank you for listening to us. We would particularly like to thank all of our sponsors who are listed at the bottom, including Cure Parkinson's and Parkinson's UK. We wouldn't be able to do any of the research that we do and all of the genotyping that we've accomplished without any of their support. So we're very grateful for them in helping us to expand our research. So thank you.